You think you eat clean? You wash your veggies, read the labels, maybe even buy organic. But what if I told you that, no matter how careful you are, you're still consuming something you never see, never taste, and never asked for? It's not a secret ingredient or a food additive. It's plastic. The same plastic you use every day, the same plastic you throw away. And yes, it's very likely hiding in your salt. Stick with me, because what you're about to learn will change the way you look at your plate and give you the tools to fight back. Let's start with the plastic we can't see. Picture a simple salt shaker sitting on your table. It looks harmless, but it represents a global crisis. This isn't about the plastic bottles or bags you spot in landfills or washed up on beaches. This is about microplastics, tiny fragments of plastic, officially defined as being smaller than 5 millimeters. But in reality, most are much, much smaller. Many are so small, they're completely invisible to the naked eye. Where do these invisible invaders come from? First, there are primary microplastics, like the microbeads that used to be in face scrubs. But the real problem is secondary microplastics. These are formed when larger pieces of plastic, think bottles, bags, and even synthetic fibers from clothes, are battered by sunlight, wind, and waves. Over time, they break down into tinier and tinier pieces, but they never completely disappear. Every single year, about 23 million metric tons of plastic waste ends up in our rivers and oceans. That's right, 23 million tons. And here's the kicker. Plastic doesn't biodegrade. It just gets smaller and smaller, turning into a fine plastic dust that's now found everywhere, at the deepest points of the ocean, in mountain snow, drifting through the wind, and yes, sprinkled onto your food. Recent estimates suggest we could be ingesting tens of thousands of microplastic particles every year, just from what we eat, drink, and breathe. But how does this plastic confetti actually end up in your body? The journey starts with a single plastic bottle tossed on the ground. Rain sweeps it into a river, the river carries it to the sea, and the sun and waves smash it down into microplastic. In the ocean, these tiny particles look an awful lot like food to small creatures like plankton. The plankton eat the plastic, small fish eat the plankton, bigger fish eat the smaller fish, and so on. Each step up the food chain packing in more plastic and more of the toxic chemicals that cling to these fragments. By the time a salmon or a shrimp lands on your dinner plate, it's likely carrying a burden of microplastics that's been building up with every meal it's ever had. This process is called bioaccumulation, and it means that the higher up the food chain you go, the more plastic you might be getting. And it's not just the plastic itself. Microplastics act like sponges, absorbing pesticides, heavy metals, and other contaminants from the water, which then hitch a ride into animals, and eventually into us. Let's talk specifics. Which foods are secretly seasoned with plastic the most? Here are the top 5. First up, seafood. This is the most direct route from ocean to plate. Shellfish, like clams, mussels, and oysters, are especially vulnerable because they filter huge amounts of water, trapping microplastics in their tissues. But it's not just shellfish. A recent study by Portland State University in 2025 found microplastics in nearly 99% of all seafood samples tested, including pink shrimp and Chinook salmon. And it's not just in their digestive tracts. Those tiny nanoplastics are so small, they penetrate into the muscle, the part we actually eat. Number 2, salt. You might not expect it, but salt is a major source of microplastics in our diet. Sea salt is made by evaporating seawater, and when that water is contaminated with microplastics, so is the salt. But even rock salt isn't immune. A 2024 study found microplastics in all salt brands tested in India, with some iodized salts containing up to 89 microplastic particles per kilogram. Himalayan pink salt, often considered a healthier option, actually had the highest levels of plastic. The contamination sometimes comes from processing and packaging, meaning that plastic finds a way into even the purest-looking products. Third on the list, bottled and tap water. You might think bottled water is a safe bet, but think again. In 2024, researchers found that just 1 liter of bottled water can contain up to 240,000 fragments of plastic, most of which are nanoplastics, so tiny they can pass through cell membranes. Tap water isn't safe either, as old pipes and municipal treatment systems can introduce microplastics into your glass. Fourth, fruits and vegetables. This might come as a shock, but plants can actually absorb microplastics from the soil. Plastic mulch is commonly used in agriculture, and irrigation water can be contaminated. These particles are picked up by roots and transported into the edible parts of the plant. Studies have found plastics in a variety of produce, with apples and carrots topping the list. And finally, processed foods and surprising drinks. Ultra-processed foods often contain more plastic because they spend more time in contact with plastic machinery and packaging. For example, instant rice has been found to contain 4 times more plastic than regular uncooked rice. And drinks like beer and tea aren't exempt. Beer is made with water, and water is now a major source of microplastics. But perhaps the biggest surprise, those fancy pyramid-shaped silken tea bags can release billions of microplastic and nanoplastic particles into a single cup of tea. So why should you care? Is eating plastic actually dangerous? That's the burning question. Officially, the FDA and other agencies say there's not enough evidence to declare the microplastics in our food a health risk. But recent studies are painting a worrying picture. Microplastics have been found in human blood, lungs, livers, and even brains. A 2024 study discovered that 58% of patients who had procedures to clear their carotid arteries had plaque containing plastic particles, and those patients had a significantly higher risk of heart attacks, strokes, and death. Other research suggests that microplastics may disrupt our gut health by altering the gut microbiome, leading to inflammation, and even a suspected link to colon cancer. The science is still emerging, but the red flags are waving. Now for the good news, you have the power to reduce your plastic intake. Start by ditching single-use plastics, get a reusable bottle, and skip the bottled water. Choose fresh, whole foods whenever you can, and avoid overly processed products. Store food in glass containers, not plastic, and never microwave food in plastic containers or with plastic wrap. If you love tea, use loose leaves instead of plastic tea bags. And finally, support policies and companies working to reduce plastic pollution. Plastic is now an invisible ingredient in our food, making its way from the trash we throw away to the meals we eat. We still don't know the full health impact, but the early signs are worrying enough to take action now. Every small change you make helps protect your health and the planet. Remember, you don't have to be perfect, just a bit smarter, one meal at a time.